Welcome on into the Wolverine TV. I'm Clayton Sayfie with Chris Balas and Austin Fox. We are going to break down some Michigan basketball offseason storylines, then we'll get into some spring football. The spring game is happening tomorrow on Saturday. Not open to fans, not open to media. Families will be there, but there'll be some information coming out of there, and we'll preview some of the top storylines here coming out of the spring. But first, Austin, I need you to tell the people about the promo code for free at thewolverine.com and what that can get them.
Yeah, it's an incredible deal. People who are not currently subscribed to the Wolverine can buy a subscription and pay for 1 month and then get their following 4 months free. It's the perfect way to get all the behind-the-scenes coverage in Michigan football, Michigan basketball, and all the latest recruiting news. So this deal ends this weekend, so take advantage of it now while it's still available.
Yeah, so for free, the numeral 4, F-R-E-E. You can see it up there on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, so do that at thewolverine.com. Great deal. Join us there on the message board and with all of our premium content. Let's get into basketball first, and let's start with some of the seniors who are making their decisions, because every single player in college basketball technically has a decision to make this offseason on what they're going to do. They can come back due to the NCAA giving out that free year. We can start with Mike Smith, which was not unexpected at all, deciding to take his shot at the NBA. I don't blame him. If he's going to move on, you might as well do a couple workouts and try to possibly make a team, or go the G League route or go the Summer League route. So I don't blame him there for that. And Chris, you've been kind of on top of that all along, that he was likely going to move on even before the season ended. Then the attention kind of turns to guys like Sean D. Brown and Eli Brooks, who are weighing their options as well.
Yeah, and you never know, man. Guys change their minds, and Mike Smith, why not shoot for the stars, man? If you're going to go for it, go for it. And this is a kid that's got opportunities. We've heard of one in Chicago in the private sector, Columbia grad, going to have some Michigan education on top of that. So not too shabby. This kid's going to be successful whatever he does and wherever he goes. And I think, with his size, first of all, what he accomplished here, winning a Big Ten championship, everybody says, well, we can do better, so on and so forth. We'll see, but, there are going to be other guys that are more athletic. But the way that he ran an offense and how he fit and how selfless he was unbelievable. So this guy is going to do great things. I hope if he really wants his cup of coffee in the league, maybe somehow that happens, or, plays overseas or whatever for a little while and scratches that itch. But no matter what he does, he's going to be successful in the private sector. How does this affect the other guys coming back is the big question. We've seen names pop up from the portal. Jacob Young from Rutgers, great defender. But not a great shooter. Michigan's got a few of those already. Then you've heard about Marcus Carr, who I just think is a black hole, and how would he fit? I really don't like the Big Ten to Big Ten transfer. And in fact, I think it stinks. I mean, you're going to a rival, essentially. I don't care, if it's in conference, it's a rival as far as I'm concerned. And I don't like that. But, it's a real possibility, especially depending now on what Eli Brooks does, because I traded texts with Sean D. Brown last night. He's going to make a decision on Saturday. He's gone back and forth on this one. It's going to be a tough one, I think, for Michigan fans. But yeah, it is what it is. What he did in his 1 year, and what I wrote yesterday on the message board was, I think more fondly of him than I have some 2 or 3 year guys here in Ann Arbor, and what he accomplished and what a great team player he was, how well he fit. We didn't get to see enough of him, let's put it that way. So now, how does that affect Eli Brooks? Because that's the big one, and that's going to really determine how hard you hit the portal. And if Eli Brooks were to come back, which I think he was strongly leaning toward doing at one point, how does this affect that? We're going to have to wait and see. But wrote a column a few weeks back about how I thought that Juwan Howard's recruiting needed to start with these guards, because getting one of them back would make a huge impact in bridging that gap between the guys coming in and the guys that are here now, and keeping that culture intact and getting some guys here who absolutely know how to win and have been part of that culture. So that's the big one right now.
What Mike Smith and Sean D. Brown meant to this Michigan basketball team this past year in their 1 year was incredible. I don't think Michigan wins a Big Ten regular season and goes to the Elite Eight without those two. They were both incredible leaders, incredibly mature. They brought all the intangibles you need to win at a high level. even if, well, obviously Smith isn't coming back, and if Shawnee Brown does not come back, but Eli Brooks does, I think Michigan basketball fans would still have to be very happy with that scenario. Simply getting one of these key seniors back for next year's team would be invaluable when talking about the leadership that potentially a Brooks would bring if he were to come back again next year. You talked about Mike Smith a little bit. It's hard to imagine him making it in the NBA. It would be cool to see him have success in the G League for a little bit, but regardless, he's going to be successful in whatever he does after basketball, when considering he does have an Ivy League degree under his belt, as well as that Michigan education that you talked about. So we'll see what Shawnee Brown does this weekend. And then again, all eyes turn to Eli Brooks, and Michigan fans would be thrilled simply to get him back next year if he were to decide to do that.
Let's be clear, too. It's got to be tough for Eli Brooks, man, if all these guys are moving on and he's the one guy and all of your teammates that you came in with are leaving and everything else. I guess it'd be him and Brandon Johns, right, depending on Austin Davis, who I don't think is coming back. We don't know yet. But that would be tough. And you're kind of like the dad, the grandpa in the room, right? You know, he's going to get the jokes about, hey, Pa, So that would be tough. But to me, that's really where I'm focusing my energy right now. If I'm Juwan Howard, of course, they're looking at the portal. There are other guys out there too, some big guys they're looking at, and to plug in pieces, we've seen that it can work, right? And in some ways, they were fortunate. They didn't land Nojel Eastern, another guy that they were going to take from the portal, which I thought would have been a disaster. And I don't think he even ended up playing last year, if I'm not mistaken. So they've got to continue to get breaks, identify kids that will fit here, and go from there.
Yeah, and the thing is with the portal, I think they probably weren't hitting it as hard maybe the last week and a half because they were, seeing what some of these guys are going to do. And Juwan Howard extended that open invitation to all his seniors to return. But now that they are going to hit it a little bit harder, I think that, Michigan might be positioned the best out of any team in the country in terms of, hey, this is what we do with our transfers. Mike Smith came in, he ran the team, he led the Big Ten in assists. He had a great role on this team. Shawnee Brown embraced his role. Like, Juwan Howard's not going to make any promises. He didn't to Shawnee Brown and Mike Smith last year. And, a lot of us were questioning whether or not Mike Smith's game would translate to the next level. And I'm sure Juwan Howard, was a little hesitant as well. It worked out, and he's probably telling guys that he's talking to in the portal, like, hey, I'm not going to make you any promises either, but, man, we can, plug and play here with some of these guys. And, the proof is there. As opposed to some other teams that maybe, haven't shown that they can utilize their transfers as much. So if Michigan decides to go that route, I think that they're positioned pretty well out of, a lot of different teams around the country. They're also trying to hit the portal.
Yeah, without a doubt. And again, it's about getting the right guys and the right fits and a little bit of luck too, which they did. I mean, not landing Isaiah Todd, to me, it was probably some good fortune. I hate to say it. Even when Isaiah Livers got hurt, I think, was he going to beat out Brandon Johns? Was he going to be here at Christmas time if he wasn't starting? Based on we've heard about the people around him, that would have been tough. You're not just recruiting a kid, you're recruiting the people around them, their entourage, their families, and they've got to be happy too, because these are impressionable young men. So, and then we talked about the Nojel Eastern thing, the Josh Christopher thing. What a mess that could have been. And as we've seen, and as Juwan Howard has said, culture and chemistry is everything. Not everything, but a hell of a lot. And so those guys were not good fits in hindsight. And in hindsight, they were lucky not to get them.
Yeah, it was a blessing in disguise that Michigan did not get Josh Christopher, and then Isaiah Todd falls into that mix as well. When you do bring in a transfer, somebody from another university, like you said, they have to fit your culture, and Mike Smith and Shawnee Brown exemplified that perfectly this past year. Some of these other transfers we just talked about, would they potentially fit the Michigan culture? It's hard to know until you actually get these guys on campus. Jacob Young, Marcus Carr from Minnesota, Walker Kessler's name popped up briefly, the transfer center from North Carolina, but obviously I don't think that one's going to happen. I don't think he wants to be a backup here to Hunter Dickinson. So I trust Juwan Howard's judgment after, again, the way he identified Smith and Brown and saw that they'd be good fits, and sure enough, they were. So if Michigan does decide to go the transfer route once again, I trust Howard and that these guys will be great culture fits once again next year if that's what Michigan decides to do.
Yeah, when Juwan Howard was talking, accepting the AP National Coach of the Year honor, someone asked him about, one of the biggest things that really positioned your team this past season was those 2 transfers, and how'd you go about picking them? And he's talked about this a couple times, and one of the big things was it would be unfair to the guys on the current roster if I brought guys in that would come in and try to, even put their own stamp on the culture here or change what we're doing. No, like they'd have to come in and they would be the ones that have to adjust. And I think coming into any new coach after John Beilein left, I think that was one of my concerns was he built rosters so well. You can knock him on recruiting all you want and people try to do that, but he knew how to build a culture and a roster, and I think Juwan Howard is just doing that masterfully as well. Anything else on hoops before we talk a little spring football, gentlemen?
And man, how about Franz Wagner just saying, "Hey, you know what? I can't end on that note. Let me come back and give you another year." It'd be fantastic. We don't expect it. The kid's going to be a lottery pick, But there are always surprises, guys. Period. End of story. And you can sit there and say, "Well, this guy's leaning this way and this guy's leaning that way," and you're always going to get that. Mr. Twitter tough guy saying, "Oh, you were wrong," or so on and so forth. We can only tell you which way the wind is blowing on a particular day. So look at Shawnee Brown, right? Had been leaning towards coming back, and then all of a sudden, hey, there he goes. And again, man, I wish we would have seen just a little bit more of him, but can't really fault him for going out and pursuing this as a career. Now, your shelf life, let's be honest, is limited when you're an athlete, and he can make, even if he goes overseas. I know a lot of Michigan guys that have made great money over there and great livings and have come back and had a lot of money to start with when they decided on their next endeavors. So this is another guy like Mike Smith that's going to go places.
2 mock drafts came out yesterday, CBS and ESPN. CBS had him going number 15 overall in this year's draft, and ESPN at number 9 overall. Those seem a bit high to me, but it looks like he's going to be a top 20 pick if he does indeed come out. I don't expect him back. He didn't quite have the same legacy that his brother Mo had, but that's a pretty high standard to live up to. But man, Franz Wagner still gave us some incredible memories this past year, and he was really fun to watch. And I've heard a lot of Michigan fans ask, are there any more Wagner brothers on the way? I don't think there are, but man, both of those guys were a joy to watch while they were both in Ann Arbor.
It's never too late to start. Let's put it that way. Well, I guess it is at some point.
Right. So. No, that would be, maybe 20 years down the road or something of another Wagner. It's like, wait, there's this guy over there in the, Euro League playing.
Right.
Yeah, I was talking to Jonathan Wasserman, a NBA draft analyst from Bleacher Report the other day, and, Austin, he was saying basically the same thing that you just said, and he has Franz going 11 in his mock draft, and he said, no, this is not a top 5 draft pick, but this is one of the easier guys to project because he does so many different things well. He's like, he's not an elite shooter. He's not, elite at a lot of different things. He's elite defensively. But he just does so many different things that he's going to be a star role player is basically what he said is the ceiling for Franz Wagner. And those guys are so valuable. And he named a few guys that were comparisons. Nicholas Batum was his number one comparison. He's in his 13th year in the NBA, and he's had some outstanding years. Not a guy that stands out a ton, but a guy who gets paid a lot of money. And then I'm looking at last year, the draft, and I was saying, okay, who's number 11 last year? Well, that guy, I forget exactly who it is. He is making over $4 million this year. He is guaranteed to make over $4 million next year, and then team options after that for over $5 million in years 3 and 4. So this is not chump change that we're talking about it. But, Chris, like you said, surprises always happen. Is Michigan due, I think they are, for a guy to randomly surprise and say, I'm coming back, as opposed to leave? But that's a lot of money you're leaving on the table. But I will say that Michigan's kind of due for that because they've had some guys leave maybe a year too early that we've seen.
Hey, his parents are fine, and his brother's a millionaire. So
right.
If it were me, I'm just saying, man, it'd be really hard for me to leave on that note. And that's what people, fair or not, the last memory is the freshest memory. And man, he had a really rough game, and that's a hell of a way to go out. And it's unfortunate. He pretty much had his mind made up before the year that, hey, this is going to be it. And, hey, Mo stayed for 3. Maybe Franz says, I want him to stay a third year and becomes a Michigan hero forever, and leads them to another Big Ten championship and maybe a Final Four this time. But not likely. And the sooner that he declares, I think the better for everyone involved. If that's in fact what he's going to do, maybe he's thinking about it. Don't expect it, but you just never know.
If I were in Franz Wagner's shoes, I would come back for 2 or even 3 more years at Michigan, get my degree, and lead the team to another Big Ten title or 2. But again, that's easy for me to say when I don't have millions potentially waiting on the table.
Well, you got millions here with this job, so
exactly.
You kind of know what it's like. So yeah,
that's not to change.
Right. I mean, so
this guy's sitting in front of a door in his mom's basement. Come on. All right, let's move on.
Right.
Football it is. Let's go to football. Spring practice, 1 left. It's the spring game, which is going to be, as we've seen, the most unique time in college sports right now over the last year plus. It's going to be closed to everyone except families. It's at least good that they're doing something competitive at the end. It's at least nice that these families can come up, because I think, man, it's just been rough on everybody, and college athletes are not, excluded from that group. This is a Michigan team that is going to play it close to the vest, I think, and it kind of makes sense that they're not opening this up to the public at the same time. I think the fans could have used it too, just like I was saying with the parents and stuff like that. What are your guys' quick thoughts on them just kind of, flying, or Austin put it yesterday, in back in the submarine, I guess.
Number one, your graphics game is awesome. Did you get that picture from the bridge? Did they kick you off?
No, this is a USA Today photo.
Oh, so they let somebody in there.
Yeah, I guess.
We're going to have to talk to some people over there. But I do know a couple people that aren't family members that are going to be at the stadium. So we will have reports on that at thewolverine.com. And again, promo code for free at thewolverine.com. So we should have an indication. Everything we've heard is that the offense is ahead of the defense, and the offense isn't very good right now. They're running the ball, though. The quarterbacks need some work. Cade McNamara has never been a great practice quarterback, regardless of what people have said. Even last year, they gave him opportunities to win games, or to win the job going into the Rutgers game and some other games, and he couldn't do it. He just had bad weeks of practice. So everybody's like, well, maybe he's a gamer, Well, let's see that you're a gamer against more than just Rutgers before we anoint you, or anybody else for that matter. And it's nothing personal. But we've heard too much, guys, over in the last several years about the quarterbacks. And Dylan McCaffrey was going to be the next guy, and then it was Joe Milton, and now it's J.J. McCarthy or Cade McNamara. Just get somebody in there who can play at a championship level. It's been way too long. It's been since Chad Henne, and he didn't even win a championship other than his first year when he shared one as a freshman. So that's where it starts for me. But I think the expectations are low, and maybe that's a good thing. These guys have been – I remember a couple of years ago when Jim Harbaugh said, I'd pick us to win it. Was that 2018 when he said, hey,
19, I think. Yeah.
2019. I'd pick us to win it all. And then, of course, they got trounced by Ohio State. So it's time to put up or shut up, I guess, is what and they have shut up. They haven't said a whole lot. And I haven't read anything from anybody out there saying that this team is going to challenge for a championship. They're basically battling for second right now in the East in the West, in the East until they prove otherwise. So, hey, I'm excited to hear about what happens on Saturday, but let's be honest, man, taking the temperature of the fan base, a lot of them are like, we're a basketball school now until football shows me something.
Yeah, I feel like the team has really kind of put their heads down this spring and just kind of gone to work. A lot of people on our message board had complained over the past few years that the team was talking a bit too much, and they said that they needed to, say less and do more. And I feel like Jim Harbaugh kind of has that mentality. Once again, you mentioned the submarine aspect. He did that his first year on campus back in 2015 when they really went dark during that fall camp, and it worked out pretty darn well. I'm okay with them not allowing fans in this spring again. I think this team has a lot of work to do, a lot of developing that needs to be done. So I don't know if I think they don't necessarily want people to see the product at this time. We'll see what happens, man. Like Chris said, they need to find a quarterback, whether that's McNamara, McCarthy, Alan Bowman once he gets here. We'll see how that plays out. But I like the fact that they're just putting their heads down, going to work, and really not much information has come out this spring. And, maybe that's a good thing right now. Maybe that's exactly what this team needs is the less attention, the better right now, in my opinion.
What are you guys talking about? They don't have a quarterback. Did you not see that clip of JJ throwing that deep ball against the threes yesterday?
Yeah. When I brought that up to one of my guys, he said, well, they didn't show the other 5. So you can take highlights of anybody you could take the highlights of Austin playing in a Gus Macker and make him look good. You know what I mean? Maybe. But if you take the best plays without showing the entire picture, then you're doing a disservice to people. So you can get all excited. And in fact, one of our subscribers said, oh man, look, a quarterback that can hit somebody in stride. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe it was maybe that was the 1 out of 10 or something like that. Who knows? And I'm not being cynical here. I'm just saying being a realist, and let's see how these guys do against defenses that are geared to stop them. Cade McNamara, whoever it is, I am excited to see what this team is when we see them against Western Michigan in September, and hopefully in front of some fans if they ever get a handle on the virus here in the state of Michigan. What a disaster it's been. But you know what? Show me, I guess, is where I am right now, and that's where I'm going to be under Jim Harbaugh, and he's going to have to prove me wrong at this point. But I'm not real confident that this thing is going to be where everybody expected it to be under Jim Harbaugh eventually.
I learned a long time ago not to put stock into practice videos either, or highlight videos, or high school highlight videos, whatever the case may be. You only see the good plays, and conveniently, all the bad plays are left out. And I'm sure there's been a lot of bad plays with McCarthy and others in practice as well, but it's hard not to be in wait-and-see mode. We've gotten our hopes up way too many times in recent years, only to be disappointed. So this looks like a 7-5 or so team to me, and I think that's the mindset I'm going to have up until fall camp in the season until they prove us wrong.
Yeah, and obviously I was just kidding. I mean, no, I'm not anointing a JJ for that throw. And yeah, like you said, I mean, one, it was against the threes, and it was funny because a lot of people were like, well, who the hell got burned on that route? I think it was Christian Dixon, another true freshman there. It's like, who's getting burned on that? And then you watch the other routes that were developing. Everyone was open, so not a great sign about the defense. But again, this is the third string. But I just thought it was funny. Like, the one thing we've got to see at practice was, this, and I think it was perfect because it just made everyone freak out in every which way. Some people optimistic, some people, trashing everything. So perfectly summed up, I guess, where the state of the fan base is. But let's talk about the offensive line real quick because it's starting to, Josh Gaddis talked yesterday about how Zach Zinter is the guy they're building around. And Chris, you've talked about this as well from what you've heard. And man, watching that kid last year as a true freshman, I was impressed by, he's basically like the best offensive lineman. I know he maybe didn't perform the best, but you could see that was going to be the case once he got a little more comfortable. He might be one of the strongest guys on the team. What are your guys' thoughts on some of the surprises? And CB, you wrote about this yesterday with Greg Crippen is now the number 2 center behind Andrew Vastardis, and that can obviously change. And, if a guy misses a practice or whatever, I think we've seen that as well. Ryan Hayes starting to come along. Taylor Upshaw said he was the toughest guy to get around when we talked to Taylor Upshaw on Monday. So, I will say, the offensive line is so important. Everyone always talks about it, but it's one of the position groups that I'm least concerned about. Now, I'm very concerned about some other position groups, but, I think Ed Warner left this room in a really, really good spot. As good as it really could have been, and as good as it has been over the last, really since Lloyd Carr was here, I'd say. Maybe, Richard had a couple good O-lines, I guess. But, hey, what are your guys' thoughts on kind of some of the stuff starting to come out about the guys up front?
Well, to play devil's advocate, you don't want your freshman to be your best lineman when you've had guys that have been in the program for a while, too, no matter how good he is. And I go back to what Doug Skeen, our analyst, says, Michigan's All Big Ten offensive lineman from the early 90s, when he said, You want your upperclassmen, when it's their time, they're so hungry, they're teaching the younger guys, and then you bring in the next wave. And we saw that for so many years, guys, from Bo Schembechler to Gary Moeller to Lloyd Carr. And then, of course, it fell off the face of the earth when Rich Rodriguez was recruiting, 0 stars to to get there. And he had a few good guys, there's no question, but that was not a priority. Let's put it that way. And I miss it. You miss being offensive line U. I guess Wisconsin is certainly that now in the Big Ten. And Michigan's kind of they've had some good players, but have they had great line play? Absolutely not. When you can impose your will on somebody in the fourth quarter, when's the last time that happened? I couldn't tell you. So, and that's a disappointment. So they need to get back to that. Number one. Number two, I want to know what happened to Reese Atterbury, because Greg Crippen is now the true freshman is the backup center. We know that Carson Barnhart's been banged up. He's been playing. He'll probably compete at left tackle. Maybe a little bit at guard. They're still trying to figure out who goes where. But, we heard a lot of great things about Reese Atterbury last year, like we're hearing about Greg Crippen now, the true freshman early enrollee. So where's Reese? So we'll find out. We'll do some digging there. So, but again, things change, guys. One guy's one day, one guy is, here, and the next day you aren't hearing about him. So, but I'm looking for consistency. And I guess the biggest disappointment, I thought Willie Allen was going to come in here and be a mauler, and the transfers from Louisiana Tech. And we, have heard that he's been working with the 2s and the 3s and needs to get in shape. So, you're thinking, man, it'd be great if you could get one of these guys in here to plug them in. And, you've got 2 future NFL guys on the line, and him and Zach Zinter. I think Andrew Stuber is solid. Do I think he is, upper echelon in Michigan history? No. We hear very, very solid a lot with a lot of these guys. We're looking for some, how do I say it, some guys that are really nasty and that really just want to bury people on every play. And I think there are some guys that have that mentality, but you want to see it with consistency. It's been too long. So again, wait and see mode on the offensive line as well.
I like the individual talent that Michigan has up front. They have several guys who have played a ton of football here. Andrew Vistardis as a 6-year senior, Stuber as a redshirt junior again. Ryan Hayes has played a lot of football, and they also have a lot of young guys who it's easy to be excited about. Zach Zinter's name comes to mind pretty quick. Trevor Keegan got his feet wet late last year. But with that being said, the coaching scares me a little bit. Sharon Moore, a first-year offensive line coach, has never coached offensive line at Michigan, so we'll see how he does in that role, taking over for Ed Warner. It's been way too long since Michigan really put it all together up front and turned into a dominant unit. I think you can make the case that 2006 under Lloyd Carr, his second last year on the job, was the last time that Michigan had a truly dominant offensive line that performed well against great competition late in games. I know Jim Harbaugh had some decent offensive lines, specifically in 2015, 16, and 18, but those weren't elite units that really imposed their will on opponents, and we need to get back to that. I think Michigan's offensive line has underachieved way too often over the last decade plus, and that's why I'm in wait-and-see mode as well with this group. Again, I like a lot of the individual talent, but it's not a position as a whole that I'm overly optimistic about for the reasons I just mentioned.
Last thing real quick on the defense, what's the number one, I guess, question for you guys or thing that you are going to be looking for coming out of spring into summer and then obviously fall camp when things all the pieces kind of fall into place? For me, it's the front 7, and that's a lot of guys, 7 out of 11 players. I like the safeties. I think the corners will be better. They were obviously put in a tough spot last year, and, I think that, Jamon Green and Vince Gray just weren't ready to step into the roles they were forced into once Ambry Thomas left. That's also not a great thing that, you only had one guy that was really ready to go. But we could talk about that for a long time. I like Aiden Hutchinson. I think Taylor Upshaw showed some decent things last season. I think the defensive tackles are going to be interesting in a new defense. I don't think they have a ton of big nose guard type guys on the roster because that wasn't what they were really recruiting for. And the linebackers, I think, struggled a lot last year. You don't have Cam McGrone back. You're moving Michael Barrett to the middle. I think it's kind of, I don't want to say a mess at this point, but there's just so many moving pieces. They got to solidify some things, but it is good that they've had 14 practices here to try to at least start that process.
Yeah, if you can't stop the run, you aren't going to win. And I'm not talking about elite defense here. I'm talking about, something that's not a sieve. where, you can go down and score in 14 plays on offense. Hopefully the speed and space will be better this year. I'll believe it when I see it. But, it's disheartening when you score and then you give up, you can't. Wisconsin goes down and runs the ball down your throat in 6 or 7 plays, and you've got guys on the sidelines, waiting to get to their phones to see what they're going to be doing after the game. I mean, it's huge to be able to stop the run, obviously, and they, can they do it? A guy like Mozzie Smith is really going to have to step up. If they're going to be playing a lot of 3-4, which is indicative now of what they're going to be doing, then you need that nose guard that's going to be, a badass. And can he be that? He's got the potential and he's got the strength. Can he do it on a consistent basis? That's what everybody wants to know. So can Chris Hinton make that next step? He didn't play like a 5-star and hasn't. Now he's young, but generally early in your career, like second year, I remember Alan Branch, who was a lot heavier back in 2005 or 4 or whatever it was, in the second year coming on and really making a step where, okay, this guy's making an impact now. Hinton did it against Rutgers, but in other games he was getting pushed around and playing too high. Donovan Jeter, I'm not saying I'm tired of hearing about him being, hey, we're relying on this guy, but the juice hasn't been worth the squeeze there in terms of what they've told us as far as, hey, Donovan Jeter, watch out for this guy. He's been on roller skates a few times. So these guys, this is where it starts. And who knows how Michael Barrett's going to do at linebacker. He was playing Viper. Can he, take on a guy that's coming downhill at him at middle linebacker, especially if the defensive line's not protecting him? Who knows? So that to me is the biggest question mark. And that is the number one thing that I need to see before I believe that this defense will be better than serviceable.
Michigan hasn't had great or even above average defensive tackle play. I think you could make the case since Mo Hurst left following that 2017 season. Yeah, we've heard a lot about Chris Hinton and Donovan Jeter, but it's about time that they really start living up to their potential and what people think they can be. I want to see some pass rushers emerge as well on the edge. I know Kwity Paye and Aiden Hutchinson got hurt last year, but Michigan's pass rush was non-existent for way too much of last year. We've heard a lot of the names. Taylor Upshaw mentioned about 5 guys the other day when he talked about who Michigan's best pass rushers have been this spring, whether it's a Braden McGregor or a Jalen Harrell, or Upshaw mentioned himself as well. I think one of those young guys needs to emerge. David Ojabo, the redshirt freshman, is listed as a linebacker on Michigan's roster, but I think he's going to be crucial in that aspect as well, coming off the edge at times as kind of that stand-up edge position that Taylor Upshaw talked about that Mike McDonald is going to utilize now in this defense. Clayton, you mentioned the corners, but they're arguably the biggest aspect to this defense as well in terms of a spot that needs to get better. Vince Gray and Jamon Green were burned way too often last year on a consistent basis. Both of those guys need to be better, or someone behind them on the depth chart needs to step up, whether that's another young guy and a Jalen Perry or some of the other young guys that this secondary has. But I think you could point to almost every single position on this defense with the exception of safety as having significant question marks at it. Linebackers another with Ross and Barrett, and then hopefully a third guy needing to emerge. But there's so many areas that this defense needs to shore up before we really get excited about this unit, and we need to see it on the field before we start believing that they can really stop great offenses.
And I will say that those corners were put in bad positions last year, man. So talk about sapping confidence. I think Jamon Green did some good things too. Vince Gray lost his confidence, and flat out you could see it. He was put in some impossible positions. So, but yeah, he needs to be better. So, and what we've heard about them is that they've been solid. Now, does that mean that, they're being put in better positions to succeed, not being put on an island, or maybe the receivers aren't as good? Who knows? But these are all questions that are going to be answered, early in the season. And it's kind of exciting and a little bit scary, I guess, if you're a Michigan fan. Yep.
Yeah. The last thing, the Mays team is favored by 3.5 points. I just made that up, but we have no idea who, or maybe Chris, you do, but no idea who's on each team. You have to pick one, Mays or Blue. I'm going to go with the Mays team to get some steak on Saturday night over the Blue team that will be eating hot dogs. Just pick a team.
Are you sure? How do you know it's not going to be white? Blue
I don't
and white
know.
game.
All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, blue and white.
So
That
you
doesn't
lose.
sound.
If either one of them wears maize, you lose, and you owe us steaks. And so
All
how's
right.
that?
All
Austin
right.
sounds good to me. So I'll go with the blue
Absolutely.
or white because I think it'll be a blue-white game, and I think that the quarterbacks might wear maize. So who
Well,
knows?
no, I mean, but they might call them the Maze team. I
I
don't know.
know. The funny, the good thing, when I was in school, man, they used to open that thing up, and it was a game, and those guys played their ass off because one team's getting steak, the other one's getting hot dogs. And there was one game my dad came down. It was great, and this is how good it used to be. They used to open it up, and afterwards the kids could go down and talk to the players and mingle. It's not the same anymore, and it's unfortunate because that was a great moment. And that's when kids really, when you can interact, that's where you get your love, as you guys know, when you're young for the University of Michigan, but it was fun. And I hope that they have that same level of fun this year. I'd love to be able to see it. I'm sure we'll see some highlights. We won't see everything, but we will have reports. We do have people there. So we'll see what happens. I couldn't tell you, Clay. I have no idea who's on either team, but we should have something on that. Hopefully on Saturday and at the very least on Sunday.
There's a picture of me with a bunch of Michigan cheerleaders on the field after a spring game, and then I had as a young kid, had a Maze Block M hat signed by just some random fullback who I don't even know who it is anymore. So, but it was fun, and those are like the cool moments. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I cannot wait till we're done with all this and people can be back in stadiums and stuff like that, full capacity, and just do what they want. And yeah, like you said, I mean, you got to bring in the fans at some point, start them young, and those were good, really good times.
They really were. Yep.
I remember going in the early 2000s as well, like you talked about, and John Navarre when he was there, even Chad Henne, Mike Hart in those years, and getting to see them and interacting with some of those guys a little bit, Mario Manningham during that time. And that's kind of how you build up your love for Michigan, and that's how it gets ingrained in you as a kid. And it's a shame that they don't do that anymore. It would be awesome for the younger generation to get to experience that again the way that we did when we were younger.
Mike Hart shared a story about how Austin asked him to sign his left pec when he came back, and that Austin said he would never wash it again. Is it still there, permanent ink?
I wish I could say that story wasn't true.
That's why I love you, man. You take so much crap, and I appreciate it.
Plays along. Yeah. No, that's why Mike Hart came back, just to see Austin and his biggest fans. So
exactly, you have to see if that.
I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
Exactly. You guys do great work. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great stuff, guys. Obviously, everyone keep an eye out for practice or spring game reports at thewolverine.com. Remember the promo code for free. You see it up there on the screen. Numeral 4 FREE. You pay for 1 month, you get 4 months absolutely free, and enjoy the weekend.